Hi, Church Creek. It's Mrs. Talon bringing to you Stranded. We're on chapter 17, not much longer to go. Well, in chapter 16, the kids found one another and a shortcut back to the Lucky Star. So let's find out what happens in chapter 17. Lunch was a celebration. 2 cans of ravioli, 1 of beef stew, 1 of chili, and 4 spoons. Cheers, Jane said, holding hers up. She'd never thought she'd be so glad to eat cold ravioli. Cheers, everyone said, and they clinked cans right before they all dug in. It felt good to be back together, like a real family. And now, between Carter's Falls and the rainwater Vanessa and Buzz had collected, they could get as thirsty as they wanted. There was plenty to drink. While they ate, Carter and Jane told the whole story of what had happened to them. Then Vanessa and Buzz told about Buzz's sail rig for catching water and the solar panel they put in place. Maybe it's all hooked up, maybe it isn't. I just don't know, Vanessa said. We need some sun to find out for sure. This weather's driving me crazy. It was just starting to rain again, and Jane could hear thunder rumbling in the distance. It looked like the weather was going to get worse before it got better, but she didn't even care. At least they were inside the boat this time, and they were making progress too. It was exciting to think that they might actually be able to use the satellite phone again, maybe even in the next day or so. She couldn't wait to talk to Mom and Eric. When they were done eating, it was time to get back to work. Vanessa and Carter spent most of the afternoon going over every inch of cable they could track, from the solar panel to the engine compartment and over to the nav station, trying to make sure everything was good to go. Buzz worked on organizing all of their provisions and bottling up the rainwater he was collecting in the mainsail, and Jane did some investigating of her own. Vanessa had already started to figure out their location on a map, but not in a way that was going to help them tell the Coast Guard where to look. There were lots of navigation materials in the cabin below. Most of them had been scattered around in the crash, then piled into one corner or another. Some of the sea charts were on the table, others were rolled up in the nav station. There was also a huge stack of books on the floor by the rear cabin door. Jane started digging through them, and that's where she found Uncle Dexter's captain's log. It was a tan, cloth-bound book with an image of jumping swordfish on the cover. Whether Vanessa had been through this stack or not, Jane didn't know, but the log grabbed her attention right away. Inside, Dex had filled page after page with his small, sloppy handwriting. There were dozens of sketches and diagrams, too. He dated every entry, going back for 3 years. It was kind of like looking at Dex's homework. As Jane flipped through, she saw drawings of dolphins and whales, descriptions of places Dexter had been to, like Samoa and Fiji, and tons of notations about latitude, longitude, and other words she didn't even recognize. At the back, on the very last written page, Jane found an entry marked for 10 a.m. on June 28th, the day of the big storm. Got a cold front coming in, faster and slipperier than I thought it was going to be. Heading into some tricky water to try and get around this storm. The kids seemed kind of nervous, but they're troopers. Jane stopped there and stared at the page. She wondered if Dex and Joe were still out on that life raft somewhere. It had been 3 whole days now. Did they have water, food? Could they fish? Had they been rescued? She hoped so, for everyone's sake. If there was anyone who could tell the Coast Guard where to look for Nowhere Island, it would be them. She looked down at the journal again. She'd seen Dex scribbling in it before, a little bit every day, when he worked on a navigation with Joe. Usually they'd look at the charts in the morning. Then he'd write in his log, while Joe steered the boat. She'd even gotten a little of that on camera for her report. And that's when it hit Jane. Maybe, just maybe, there was something she'd recorded that they could use. She ran back to her bunk and got her camera off the shelf where she kept it. Then she sat right down on the cabin floor and started looking. It didn't take long. Within a few minutes, she found the exact entry she'd been thinking about. Hi everyone, it's Jane B., and today is June 27th. It's the 3rd day of our sailing trip, and today I'm going to show you how the navigation works. Jane's heart sped up right along with the video as she pressed fast forward. When Dexter came onto the screen, she let it play again. So you see, this is the sea chart we're looking at today, Dex's voice said over the tiny speaker. As he unrolled the chart, she pressed pause. Looking as hard as she could, it was still impossible to pick out any real details on the view screen. It was too small. But then, when she hit play again, Dexter picked up a pencil and circled something several times. This is a coral reef. That's something we want to make sure and work our way around. Again, she froze the image. She jumped up, ran over to the galley table, started to flip through every chart she could find. Vanessa and Carter were peering into the engine compartment as she did, and they looked over now. Jane, what are you doing? Vanessa asked. I think I may have figured something out, she said. I was just looking at one of my videos. You should really save the batteries on that thing, Vanessa said. Don't worry about that, Jane said, pulling out another chart. And there it was, the ragged circle of a pencil from before. She looked back at the camera screen one more time to be sure. Yes, it was the same circle, the same chart. This is where we are, just before the storm hit, she said, pointing. How do you know? Carter asked. Buzz was just coming below decks now, too, and they all crowded around. Slowly, Jane told them everything that she'd just figured out. Vanessa looked at the chart, then compared it to the map she'd found in a spiral-bound book. Okay, she said excitedly. Okay, we might be closer to here. She put her finger down on the chart. 500 miles northeast of the Marshall Islands. At least, I think so. There's this, too, Jane said, holding up Dexter's journal. We might be able to find out more about which way we came. The others were all looking at her now, smiling a little with their eyebrows raised. She'd seen that look before in school. It happened every time she answered a problem. One of her teachers thought nobody would ever get. Nobody but Jane Benson, that is. So little Jane, the littlest, the smallest, the youngest of the group, is really starting to figure things out. Hopefully, in the next chapter, they may get a chance to talk to someone and tell them where they are. Will they be saved? We'll have to wait and see. Tune in next time. Bye, guys.